Well, let's talk a little bit about again, for the audience, I mean, I just think the Off the X podcast is super interesting, especially for me. I didn't know anything about DS, and to listen to these guys talk about what they did. I mean, holy crap! The one I listened to, Reagan, Dylan
Dylan
Reagan.
Reagan, yeah.
I mean, it sounds like he's in a freaking war zone when he's talking about the stories. So, but I want to talk to you about the book that you wrote. So, can you tell me the name of the book?
Sure, yeah, it's called Agents Unknown, True Stories of Life as a Special Agent in the Diplomatic Security Service.
Okay, and we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but can you tell the story about Kayla Mueller and what that was all about?
Sure. So the catalyst of the book, or the reason I wanted to write a book, I only did a little less than 10 years in DS. And in that time, if you volunteer for a lot like I did, you can have a lot of experiences that are, I think, compelling enough to write a book and have people interested in it. The catalyst for my book was the story about Kayla Mueller. So for those who don't know of Kayla Mueller, if you a Google search will lead you to a lot of information. But she was from Arizona, and she was out in Turkey doing some humanitarian work. She was captured when she went over to Syria with an individual, a friend from Doctors Without Borders. And this was, I believe, in the September 2013 timeframe when she disappeared. So Kayla was the first female ISIS American hostage, right? First female American held by ISIS. And the U.S. government was looking for her. The FBI knew of her, but didn't hadn't heard from her in almost a year. I was at the American U.S. consulate in Erbil, northern Iraq, when the embassy, the consulate, got a call about from the United Nations camp on the Iraq-Syrian border that two individuals, two Yazidi females about the age of 16 years old, claimed to have been held hostage with two American females. Um, what we learned later was that one was actually from New Zealand. They just thought because she spoke English that she was American. And the other one, based on a description they gave us, I was able to run through our FBI counterpart and determined that that the US was looking for an individual named Kayla Mueller. Perfectly fit her description, including what I recall to be a tattoo that matched. So I got on a plane. Well, I was going to take a motorcade to about eight hours north because ISIS had pushed really close to us at that point to go interview these two hostages, two individuals that were held hostage with ISIS. DOD, the task force there, the Special Operations Task Force, they were there primarily for high value targets to eliminate high value targets across the border. But they got wind of this and they called and said, "Hey, can we give you a lift?" Well, an hour and a half ride on a helicopter than a 8 hour motorcade seemed better to me. And they wanted to add one of their intel guys as well. Certainly, no problem. So that's what we did. We flew there, landed in a parking lot in the middle of Dahuk, Iraq, which is on the border about 35 kilometers from the border of Syria. Literally a parking lot with a drop bar. We walked out. We got into this taxi with this individual that was allegedly from the military. He was in plain clothes. Um, I like to joke that that was the most danger I was in Iraq because his driving was insane. But anyway,
I like allegedly.
yeah. So he took us to the United Nations camp where we met with these individuals from the United Nations who briefed us on the kind of vulnerability of these two girls that had just been escaped from ISIS. And I go into a lot of detail in the book, but I interviewed these two individuals, these two young females, and it was a tough interview, probably the hardest interview I've ever done. I was trained to do criminal investigations or interviews, not interview people that had been abused the way they had. And the stories they told me, and I'll just get into a little bit, but they were basically taken off a bus. Their parents were executed. They were put on the bus where they were. There was the ugly bus, to put it bluntly, is what they told us, and then the bus with more attractive girls because they could get sold for more. Parents were executed in front of them. The one girl, Dalal, she was separated from her sister at the time. They were sold. They went to Al Raqqa, Syria. They ended up in a place called Deir Azur, Syria. But they were sold. They were abused. They were beaten. There's one story she told me when she tried to escape with one of her friends because she was the ringleader. They were captured. They actually tied her friend down to the floor and stoned her to death. She watched her friend die because of her uh, leadership, I guess, in trying to escape. So it's just brutal stuff that they told me. Really, really hard interview, but we got a lot of information. The DOD guy was actually had pictures of individuals and of high value targets that we were looking for, that the military was looking for, and they did acknowledge that some of those were guards in the area, um, uh, guarding them at one point between their transition from different locations. What we learned, obviously, was that they were held captive with Kayla. We confirmed that Kayla did not want to leave. They had to, at the time when they left, Kayla was sleeping. I think she woke up at one point and was just. I asked why didn't she want to leave. She said she was just drained. She had been, at this for almost a year, being raped and abused and everything else. And we got a lot of detail in that interview, everything from what the house looked like, the location of the house, what they smelled, what they saw when they were transferred, which way the doors opened and windows opened, which way the sun was facing in the morning. We asked a lot of questions to kind of to return and give it to DOD so they can do what they needed to do with it. And we learned that they were in a location called Deir ez-Zor. The military took that information and verified that it was accurate. They went back several times to communicate, to interview these two girls, and ended up doing a raid on the house where they were held captive. Unfortunately, Kayla was not rescued. She was not there. But other hostages were rescued. The individual who purchased Kayla and those girls was eliminated. His name was Abu Sayyaf. Abu Sayyaf was the former, because he's dead, oil and finance minister of ISIS. And we, as in the U.S. military, snatched his wife, and they were able to gain what they call terabytes of terrorist financing information from that op, including thousands of dollars, or I'm sorry, thousands of year old artifacts that were placed into our tactical operations center at the embassy or at the consulate. And, for them, while the success was not necessarily there because they were looking for Kayla, they did eliminate a terrorist. They did get information that likely prevented further terrorist attacks. And they did evacuate or rescue some hostages. Kayla was later discovered, allegedly killed by a Jordanian airstrike, is what ISIS said. Don't know how true that is, but my understanding from news reports and based on what the girls told me, she was being raped by an individual, a heavier set individual with red hair. She was being transported to be raped by this guy, and he seemed very important to everyone around him because he always had security and dogs around. And what we learned was that she was being raped by the former head of ISIS, because he is also dead now. But his name's Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. So what we understand was she was being raped by him.
Why are they? I would understand kidnapping a U.S. citizen, holding them for hostage. Why hold on to them? Why rape them? Why what's? I mean, maybe I can't get into the mind of a freaking terrorist, but any idea?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a number of reasons, whether it be money or fear, could be a number of them. A lot of times what we understand is these kind of cells that aren't even part of ISIS will kidnap people and give them to ISIS for money, and then ISIS will do what they want with them. What I was told by the girls, they wanted to keep Kayla, and were not telling people that they had Kayla, because you might recall there were other hostages that the U.S. government knew that, the terrorist group, whether it was, the Al Qaeda in Iraq or whatever, we would know that they had these hostages. We didn't know they had Kayla, and what the girls told us was that because she was like a trophy, because she was American, she was like a trophy.
Mm, okay. Did they ever find the New Zealand girl?
No idea.